Hello everybody, welcome to this instruction video. In this video we'll be doing part 6 of Charlotte's Universe. Charlotte's Universe has been designed by Deidre Uys from Look at What I Made, and in the video description you'll find a link to the pattern. In part 6 we're going to be completing the triangles that we started last time in part 5. So then we were about here. We're going to complete this triangle, so these last 2 rows, and we're going to be working an edge along our square. So at the end of part 6 you're going to have a large square with a row of stitches all around. I'm still making my Charlotte, we've got it a bit folded, I'm still making my Charlotte with Scheepjes stone washed yarn in various colors. In the video description you'll also find a link to my color placement on my blog. So I'll take you step by step through all the rows that make up part 6. There's actually also a part of part 2 that's being repeated. I'll show you all of these rows. Let's get started. Row 52. What's important now, you have the wrong side of your work facing. Really important, because you won't be the first one to have it the other way around. So you've got the back of your work facing, wrong side. New color yarn on my hook. And in this round we're going to work a single crochet on the top of all the triangles and chain 3s in between. So in the first one, I'm going to start with a standing single crochet. So here's the top of the triangle, that's the picot. Now in there, just poke your hook in there, because in that little circle, if you open it up, that's where you want to insert your hook. So start there with a standing single crochet. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then come to the next triangle. You can also in there insert your hook and work a single crochet. Chain 3, and this you're going to repeat until you're to the last triangle. And it might look easy, like I know exactly where I want to poke my hook in, but I'm just kind of feeling it with the back of my finger. You know, where is that hole? And then I push my hook through there. 1, 2, 3, chain, and then come to the next. There you go. So I've now done a few with you. Repeat this until you're to the end. I'll just see you back here for the last space. So chain 3, and then a single crochet in the top of the triangle. Almost to the end. Last chain 3, and the last single crochet here in the top of the last picot of the triangle. Turn your work for row 53. Row 53, you should have the right side of your work facing, and we're going to start with a chain 3. 2, 3. In the first chain space we're going to work a double crochet cluster, a 3 double crochet cluster, and that's in essence a 3 double crochets work together. So yarn over into this first space, 1 leg, yarn over, the second leg, and yarn over, and the third leg, and take them all off. Around the single crochet, going to work a front post double. So yarn over, and then from the front around the stitch, grab your yarn and complete the front post double. The repeat that we're going to do is 3 double crochets in the chain space and then a front post double. That means 1, 2, 3 double crochets and then a front post double. That's your repeat. You're going to do this in all the chain spaces until you have 1 chain space left. So you're going to do this 12 times. 2, 3 doubles in the space and then a front post double around the single. This was repeat number 2. You need to do 10 more. I'll just see you back when you've done all 10 repeats. I've just worked the repeat 12 times in total. So here these are 3 doubles and then the front post double around the single, and then you should have 1 chain space left. In that chain space I'm going to make again a 3 double crochet cluster. So that's 3, is in essence 3 doubles work together. That's 1, 2, 3 legs, and then take them off. I'm going to finish the row by making a double crochet in this single crochet here. So in this very first one, just next to the slip stitch, or the slip knot I should say, work a double crochet. There we go. Turn your work for the next row. Row 54, you now have the wrong side facing. You're going to start with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and this is the stitch where you're currently in, and then skip 1, 2 stitches. That means here, well, this is the stitch where we're going to start in. We're going to work 6 double crochets. So this is the stitch where you're in, then skip 1, 2, and then this is the first stitch. This is the first of 6, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Here you go. 6 double crochets. Now if you look at your work, you'll see that you'll have 1 stitch left, that stitch left before the front post stitch. You see, here's the front post stitch. If you go at it from the other side, see, this is the front post stitch. So just a double check for you that there's 1 stitch left before the front post. Then you know it went right with skipping the stitches there. We're now going to start a repeat that we're going to do 4 times. So I'll show you the repeat once and then you do 3 more. This is very similar to what we've done before. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip 2 stitches and then make a slip stitch. So we're going to skip 1, 2, so that means the next stitch and the front post stitch. These are the 2 you're going to skip. Skip 2 stitches, then come to the 3rd stitch and work a slip stitch. Chain 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and come down, and where you already have the slip stitch, you make another one. So we're going to turn this into a loop. So in the same stitch, work a slip stitch. So you've got a loop going on there. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then again skipping 2 stitches. So you see here, we're going to skip 2 stitches and then we work 5 doubles. So 1, 2 skip and then 5 doubles. This is the first of 5. You're skipping 2 stitches there. So that's 1. This is 2, 3, 4, and the last one here, 5. Now this was the repeat, so starting at the chain 3 until this double crochet. Done once with you, you need to do 3 more. So we're going to do this 4 times in total. So and this looks very similar to rows we've done before. So do this 3 more times and then I'll see you back. When you've done the repeat 4 times in total, you should have 4 stitches left. If you look at your work, you've got 1, 2, 3 stitches and the chain 3, which is of course also a stitch. So those are the 4 stitches. We're going to work a double crochet in the next stitch. So 1 double, then skipping 2 stitches, work a double crochet on the top of the chain 3. So we're going to skip 1, 2, then come to the chain 3 here, and in the top of that work a double. I always try to get in there. Come on, there we go. In the top of the chain 3 work a double, and then you can again turn your work. row 55, right side facing again, and we're starting again with a chain 3, and we're going to skip the next 2 stitches. So this is where you're currently in, then skip 1, 2 stitches and come to the 3rd stitch. So where you're in, 1, 2, skip, and then the next stitch and work a double, and this is the first of 4. So that's 1, 2, 3 and 4, and now you should be here at the edge. You're going to see the next of chain space. That should be the next stitch. Now we're going to start a repeat again that we're going to do 3 times. I'll show you once. Chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Chain 5. We're going to skip everything that's here in the middle and come to the double crochets and work 5 doubles, so 1 on each. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So that was the repeat once. Do this 2 more, so chain 5, 5 doubles, chain 5 and 5 doubles, and then I'll see you back. Then the repeat twice more, so you now have 3 chain 5 spaces. For the last few stitches, again a chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, skipping everything here in between, come to your double crochets, and now we're only going to work 4 doubles on the first stitches. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4. So 4 double crochets. At this point you should have 2 stitches left and the chain 3. Those 2 doubles we're going to skip, and then come to the chain 3 and work a double crochet on there. So 1, 2, skip, come to the chain 3 and work a double. There we go. Again, rotate your work, turn your work for row 56. Row 56, wrong side facing. We're going to start with a chain 1. We skip the first stitch, so this is the stitch where you're currently in, and this is also the stitch that we're going to skip, because this chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch. And then we work 3 single crochets. So you see, so this is basically the stitch we're skipping, that first stitch, and come to the second. So that's 1, 2, 3 single crochets. The next stitch is this one here. We're going to skip that stitch and immediately come to the chain space. In the chain space we're going to work 5 single crochets. We're going to work 2 and then use the third one to catch this this chain 8 space, loop, and then work 2 more. So in the space. So here you're skipping that stitch. You see how we're skipping that stitch? Come to the space, work 1, 2 singles, then the third, catch the chain 8 loop and the chain 5 loop, work a single, and now work 2 more singles on the other side of the chain 8 loop, and then kind of fashion it a little bit. There we go. On the next 5 stitches, work a single crochet on each. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is the repeat. You need to do twice more. So that's 2 single crochets in this chain space, then a single crochet catching the chain 8 and the chain 5, and then 2 more single crochets in the chain space on the other side of the chain 8, and 5 singles on the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I've done twice. Do once more, and then I'll see you back for the last stitches. You have 1 chain space left, 2 single crochets, catch the chain 8 with a single crochet, and 2 more single crochets. So this is in essence following the stitch pattern as we've done there. On these last few stitches, we're going to work a single crochet in the next 3 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3 single crochets. There's now 1 stitch left. There, you're going to skip that stitch and then come to the chain space and work a single crochet on the chain 3. So you're going to skip this last stitch, come to the chain 3, poke your hook in there, and work a single crochet, and turn your work for row 57. Row 57 and onwards up to row 66 is actually a repetition of what we've done before when we're in part 2. Where is it? A repetition of these rows that we have in part 2. I'll show you this row 57 on my current work, and then I'll use the video material from part 2 to show you the rest of the rows. But for now, I'll show you this row. But row 57 is a repetition of row 19, so you've done this before. Chain 2, 1, 2, then a double crochet 2 together over the next 2 stitches. Now this is where you're currently in, so come to the next stitch, so that's where you're in, come to the next stitch and pick up a leg and yarn over, come to the next stitch and pick up a leg and take them all off. And this is your double crochet 2 together with the chain 2 is a cluster stitch. Chain 2, 1, 2, and now over the next 3 stitches go to work a cluster stitch. So that's a double crochet 3 together over those 3 stitches. So that's 1 leg and 2 legs and 3 legs, and take them all off. There we go. And again, chain 2. And this you're going to repeat. Actually, the repeat has still got the cluster stitch. 1, 2, 3, and take them all off. I've now done the repeat twice with you. You need to do 11 more, and that will bring you exactly to the end of the row. So do 10 more, and then I'll show you the last one. I'm almost to the end of the row. I have 1 repeat left. You see here I have exactly 3 stitches left. In case you're wondering, yes, I have a different color here now because I decided to change my colorway after I made the first few stitches. Chain 2, 1, 2, and then on the last 3 stitches work that last cluster stitch. So that's 1, 2, and 3, and then take them all off. And at this point you can again turn your work for row 58. For the next rows 58 to 66 is actually a repetition of the rows from part 2. Now I've got part 2 here. These rows here, you see for example here these cluster stitches, these are the ones that you've done before. This was row 19. So rows 20 up until the point here, these are the rows that you're going to be doing again. So row 58 to 66 is a repetition of row 20 to 28. And I'm going to be just copying these rows that I've recorded for part 2. I'm just going to copy them into the video here, so that's why you're going to see a different yarn and different colors, but it's exactly the same stitches. So rows 58 to 66 are repetition of rows 20 to 28 that I've just mounted into the video. Row 20, going to turn our work in this row. We do a chain 3. This counts as your first double crochet, and then turn your work the other way, so you now have the back side of the square facing the reverse side. So that chain 3 is your first double crochet. Going to skip the next chain 2 space, it's going to be this one, and then work a double crochet on the next cluster. I just want to show you exactly where that stitch is. You see here, here's the cluster stitch you worked. Then there, if I just pull this a little bit apart, that there is the stitch that's on the cluster stitch. You might think it's this little almost eye there. It's not. That is actually part of the chain stitch that you made. If you look at it from this side, it may be more logical to you. You see that there is the stitch that's the cluster stitch, and then this here forms a bit of an eye. So that there is what you're going for. If I turn it back now, you see that's if you work on the cluster stitch, you're going to work in there. And that's also where we're going to work our first double crochets, on that cluster stitch. So we're working a double crochet on the next cluster. So it's going to be on that stitch there. And then go onto the chain 2 space and work 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. And 2. And again a double crochet on the next cluster. So again that's going to be that loop, that stitch there, and not that eye. So be aware it's not there, it's here. And these last 3 stitches, the 2 stitches in the chain space and then a stitch on that cluster stitch, you're going to repeat this till the end. I'll show you a few more times. Chain 2 space, work 2 double crochets in there, and 2, and then on the cluster stitch work a double. So that was the second repeat. I'm going to do this 11 times in total. Once more, 2 double crochets in the sorry, my yarn is just a little stuck here. There we go. 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, and then go to your next cluster stitch here and work a double crochet on that. So I've now done 3 repeats with you, those 3. I'm going to do a few more, and then I'll see you just here at the end, just for the last bit. Just on the last part of this edge, you're going to work the last repeat. So I've got here 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, then a double crochet on the second last cluster, you're going to skip the next chain 2 space, and then on the last cluster work a double crochet. So this is this cluster we started with, so I'm just going to pull that standing stitch open, and then a double crochet there. So note that you're skipping that last chain 2 space, so don't go autopilot here and work double crochets and then a double crochet in that cluster and then 2 in here and then 1 in there, because then you're going to have 2 stitches too many. So be aware of that. That completes row 20. row 21 to do a chain 3, and this again counts as your first double crochet. To turn my work again, so now you're going to have the right side of the square of your work facing. And my hook just fell out. There we go. Now we're going to work a series of trebles and double crochets in this row. We're going to skip the first 2 stitches. Now just take a moment to note which 2 that is. You see, this chain 3 counts as a double crochet, and that's on your first stitch. So that there, this is your first stitch, but the double crochet counts for that already. So you're going to skip these 2 stitches, those you're going to skip, and then in the next stitch there's a third one, that one you're going to start. So we're going to skip, that stitch is already worked, that's a double crochet you have, and skip 2 stitches, and here work the next, and that's going to be 1 double crochet. The next stitch should be a stitch that's worked into the cluster. See, that stitch is worked into your cluster. That's a checkpoint for you, because what we're going to do now is going to work a front post treble around this cluster. So that's why the next stitch should be the one that's in the cluster, because we want everything to line up. So the next stitch is going to be a front post treble around this third cluster. So that one, you see there, 1, 2, 3. Twice over for a treble. Then around that cluster, pick up a loop, and then take off 1, 2, 3 times. Bring it up to where you're currently at. Going to skip a stitch to the back and then work 2 double crochets. If you see here, this is the next stitch we should work, because you see here that there is worked. So we're going to skip that stitch and then go to the next. So in the next stitch, you see how I'm skipping that stitch, go to the next, then work a double crochet, and go to the stitch after and also work a double crochet. And these 3 stitches is your repeat unit. So again, I'm going to skip the next so the next stitch, we're again going to be working over a treble over that cluster, then skip the next stitch, get to the back. You can see how I'm skipping that stitch, and in the next stitch work a double crochet again, and a second time also. So now I've done it twice. You can see how you're kind of tying these 2 clusters together. Again, twice over, around the next cluster, work a treble, skipping a stitch to the back. See how I'm skipping that stitch there. Just open this up a little bit more, you can see it better. That there's worked. I'm going to skip that and then continue here. And then work a double crochet and also on the next stitch work a double crochet. Now I have 3 of these treble worked. I'm going to continue this until I'm almost here. When I'm here, I'll see you again. So repeat this until you're here. Almost to the other side. At this point I have 3 clusters left, so I'm going to do the last treble here. That's still part of the large repeat unit. And now you have 2 clusters left, these last 2. I'm going to skip 1 stitch to the back, see that stitch there, then work 1 double crochet. at this point you should have 2 stitches left. You see this stitch and that stitch. These 2 you're going to skip, and in the top of the chain 3 going to work a double crochet. You can see those 2 stitches you still have left, and then in the chain 3 work a double crochet. Then this is row 21, and what just might be a good idea is to actually mark your trebles. Just going to open up here that nothing happens to it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to mark not the first and the last, but all the other trebles. I'm going to mark them because we're going to be working bobbles in the next row. It might just make life easy for you if you can easily find them. See, this is my first treble. I don't need that one. I'm not going to mark, but the second one. So that treble stitch, I'm just going to hook a stitch marker in there. And then in the next treble also. And this one, I'm just going to do that on all of them except for the last one. Except one you also don't need. I'm just going to hook them up quickly. And that way, it's just a way of making life easier for you. If you don't want to do this, that's just fine. No problem at all. And then here on the second last treble also. So this last one and the first one, you don't have to mark those. But here in the middle on all of these, we're going to be working bobbles in the next row. So that's why I'm marking them. Row 22, again we start with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and this again counts as your first double crochet on that first stitch. I'm just going to turn my work again. So now you again have the back of your square facing. You can see here the marked stitches. I'm going to be working in those in a moment. First we skip the first 2 stitches and then work 2 double crochets. Now again, just take a moment to see which stitches those are. Those 2 stitches you're going to skip. You see this is the very first loop. This is the chain 3, that counts as your first stitch there. Then skip 1, 2 stitches, and then on the next do a double crochet. And also on the stitch after. As you can see, if I just open this up a bit, that you've skipped those 2 stitches and then work 2 double crochets on the next 2. The next stitch should be a marked stitch, so that's a checkpoint for you. And on that marked stitch we're going to make a treble bobble. That's going to be 5 trebles we're going to be working together. So I'm just going to unhook that. So a treble, just twice over, the first one. So in that stitch I'm going to be making 5 of these, 5 legs, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the last one, number 5. At this point you'll have 6 loops on your hook. Take them all off, and what I'm going to do is, while I'm doing so, I'm just going to push slightly upwards, so doing that, and then that way you don't snag your hook here on any of these loops while you're going through. So I'm just going to pull through. And this is your treble bobble. It won't look like much at the moment, but when we do our next stitch, that's going to be a double crochet on the next stitch. This will actually form a bobble and pop the other way, which will be the front of your work. In the next stitch, that one there, work a double crochet. You can just see that bobble forming there. and also on the next stitch work a double crochet. And this here is your repeat unit. You can see that bobble there and the next two double crochets after it. That's your repeat unit. Show you once more. Your next stitch should again be a marked stitch, yeah, and that's again an indication that you need a treble bobble in there with 5 legs. So twice over for the treble, and then that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this is leg number 5, all of them in that same space. No, that last one went wrong. Let me just do that again. Twice over, take off 2 loops, take off 2 loops. At this point you have 6 loops on your hook. Take them all off. On the next 2 stitches, work a double crochet on each. So 1 and 2. Now done the repeat 2 times. You can see I've still got a few bobbles, a few marked stitches left here, and on all of these work a bobble and 2 double crochets in between, and I'll just see you here at this position of the last marked stitch. At the next stitch, which is my last marked stitch, and in there I'm again going to work a treble bobble. It's twice over, and that first leg, so you're going to work 5 of these legs again. 2, twice over for the third leg, 4 times, and 5 times, 6 loops on your hook, and take them all off. On the next 2 stitches work a double crochet on each. So 1 and 2. Your last 2 stitches, and those 2 stitches, going to skip those. Then on the chain 3 space, or actually the chain 3 I should just say, work a double crochet. That's row 22. Just show you what the front looks like at this point. You'll see that these bobbles are really very present, and this is exactly what you want. So that's row 22. Row 23. Again, start with the chain 3. That counts as your first double crochet. At this point you'll have the right side of your work facing. Going to skip the first 2 stitches and then work 22 double crochets. Let me just show you which stitch is which. This is your first loop. That belongs with the chain 3 double crochet, so that stitch you're not skipping. You're going to skip this stitch and that stitch. And then your first one is going to be here on the bobble. Let me just show you what I mean. If you look here, you'll see this bobble has kind of looks like it has an eye here on the right hand side. That eye is actually the stitch, is the double crochet that's next to it, that's there on the right. That eye belongs to this double crochet, so that's not the stitch that's on the bobble. The bobble itself has a stitch here to the right, to the left of the bobble, here on the left. If you're left-handed, it'll be on the other side, it'll be here on the right. So that is the stitch that belongs to the bobble. Then you have here the double crochet with this, that's the stitch. And you have here the next double crochet, and then that's the stitch that belongs to that second double crochet. And again, this looks like it's the eye of the bobble, but it is actually this double crochet that's next to it. So be mindful of what stitch is which, and then here that is again the stitch that belongs to the bobble. So what we're going to do is going to work 22 double crochets, and the first one is going to be on the bobble. So here's my first bobble, and on that first stitch I'm going to work the first double crochet, and then number 2 is on this double crochet here, that's 2, and then 3 here looks like it's in the eye of the bobble, but that is actually belongs to the double crochet that's to the right there. Then number 4 is on the bobble again. 5 is a double crochet, so is 6. But 6 again looks like it's in the eye of that bobble. And this you're going to repeat and again until you've worked 22 double crochets. So continue till the end when you've worked 22. In that, what looks like the eye of the bobble is the second last stitch, and the number 22 is on this last bobble. That's your last stitch, that's number 22. At this point you should have 2 stitches left, those 2. Going to skip those, and on the chain 3 top of the chain 3 work a double crochet. That completes row 23. Row 24, again a chain 3. This counts as your first double crochet, and then turn your work to have the wrong side facing. You can see here it's got the back of my work facing. And what you're going to do is we're going to work cross stitches in this row. So we're going to start by skipping the first 3 stitches and then work a double crochet in the 4th. So again, skipping the first 1, 2, 3 stitches, go to stitch number 4. As you can see there that I've skipped 3 stitches are left unworked, 1, 2, 3, then go to stitch number 4, in which you work a double crochet. We're now going to come back to the second last stitch, so to what was stitch number 3 here. We're going to come back and work a double crochet in that stitch. So kind of folding your work, getting into that stitch, pick up the yarn, slightly open up that loop, and then complete the double crochet. That gives you a bit of a that gives you a crossing here. That's a cross stitch. We're going to do that basically to the end. I'm going to skip the next stitch, then the stitch after, do a double crochet, and then come back to the stitch I skipped and work a double crochet in there. And again, skipping the next stitch, go to the stitch after, work a double crochet, then come back to the stitch skipped, pick up, slightly open up, and complete the double crochet. Skipping the next stitch, you can see this rhythm, how you're going to be making crosses, and then come back, pick up, and complete. I've now done 4 of these. I'm going to do this also on the rest of this edge, and I'll see you over here. I need to do my last cross. I'm going to skip the next stitch, and in the stitch after work a double, then come back to the stitch I skipped and work a double crochet. At this point you should have 9 of these crosses. That's just a check for you that you've got 9 of these. And at the end here you should have 2 stitches left unworked. I'm going to skip those last 2 stitches, and then in the chain 3, the top of that chain 3, just get in there properly, work a double crochet again. That completes row 24. Row 25, we're starting with the chain 3, as we're starting basically every row, and turn your work to have the front side facing. What we're now going to do is we're going to work puff stitches between our crosses. If I just show you, here's a cross, and you see there's 2 double crochets. You've kind of between the posts of these double crochets, if I just open this up a little bit, in there, so between those 2 posts, in that little hole there, that's where we're going to be working puff stitches. And we're going to be skipping the first cross and start in the second. So hook up my yarn again. Now a puff stitch means that we're going to be picking up loops and then taking them all off in the same go. I'm going to yarn over, and then in that first space pick up a loop. Got 3 loops on your hook now. Again, yarn over, and in that same space pick up a loop. Got 5 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pick up a loop. Got 7 loops on your hook. Again, yarn over, pick up a loop, and now you've got 9 loops on your hook, and all of these you want to take off in one go. So let's yarn over, and again, while I'm doing so, I'm just going to push upward to make sure I don't accidentally snag anything while I'm pulling through. And chain 1. This is your puff stitch. These 9 loops you took up and that chain 1. This is the puff stitch. Then again, chain 1. And this chain 1 is part of the pattern, and that first chain 1 is part of the puff stitch. Now I work and this is also a repeat unit until the second last cross. So in the next cross, in between there, again pick up a loop. So you're doing this 4 times. 2, 3, 4 times. That brings you to 9 loops. You're going to take off and chain 1, that's the puff stitch, and then another chain 1 for the pattern. Another puff stitch, and then between the next crosses, it's 2, 3, 4, take them all off, chain 1, and another chain 1 for the pattern. So I've now done this 3 times. I'm going to work the next 3 crosses also, and then I'll see you at this point when I've completed the puff stitch. Just completed puff stitch number 6 here. Already done the chain 1 that belongs to the puff stitch, another chain 1 for the pattern, and then in the second last cross, you see I've got 2 crosses left, so in that second last one, again between the posts work another puff stitch. Means and 4 times that you yarn over and pick up a loop, 9 loops on your hook, and take them all off, and chain 1. That's your last puff stitch worked. Going to skip this last cross here, and then work a double crochet on the chain 3. And and I just need to get into that. There you go. And that's row 25. Row 26, chain 3 as always up till now. Turn your work and have the wrong side facing. We're now going to work 2 double crochets in each of the chain 1 spaces that's between the puff stitches. So here's the first space between 2 puff stitches, going to work 2 double crochets in there. So that's 1 and 2. So that means you're going to do 12 of these double crochets in total. So in every chain 1 space, technically it's not a chain 2 space, of course, because your first chain 1 goes with your puff stitch. So I've now done that 3 times. I've got 3 more of these. So in that next space work 2 doubles and 2, and here we work 2 doubles. And in this last chain 1 space, so between these last 2 puff stitches, work 2 doubles. You're going to then go to the chain 3 that's here at the beginning, and on that close with a double crochet again. And I'm having trouble getting into it properly. There we go. Work a double crochet. So you now have 14 doubles. So you've got one here at the beginning, one at the end, and 12 in the middle. Row 27 is getting reasonably short at this point. Chain 3, that's again your first double crochet, and turn everything around once again. That brings you to the front side facing. Going to skip the first 3 stitches and then work 6 double crochets. So this first goes with the double crochet, the chain 3, so you're not going to skip that. So skip here 1, 2, 3 stitches. Then in stitch number 4 work a double crochet, and we're going to work 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then on the last one, that's number 6. At this point you should have 3 stitches left. You can see those 3 stitches there. You're going to skip those, and then on the chain 3 work a double crochet again. Now, and this is different from the other rows we've done up till now, chain 1, so not chain 3, only chain 1, and again turn your work. You're going to have the back side of your work facing for the last row. Row 28, last row. I'm going to be doing, so I'll just show you here. If you have these 6 double crochets here in the middle that we just worked, I'm going to skip the first 2, and then we're going to work in 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6 we're going to skip again. So those 2 we're skipping, and then work here in the middle 2. And we're going to start the first one with a 5 treble bobble. So again, twice over. Then in that 3rd stitch, work a 5 treble bobble. So that's a treble, 5 together. So this is leg number 3, leg number 4, and number 5. 6 loops on your hook, take them all off. In the same stitch, but you already will have this treble bobble in that same stitch, work a double crochet. And this is kind of going to tie your bobble together, this double crochet, and a treble, so twice over. In the same stitch, work a treble, 2, 3 times off. So that completes your 1/2. Chain 2, and this chain 2 is going to be your new corner for the new square. On the next stitch, again a treble. So 1, 2, 3. Now take note, now we work a treble bobble, so it's not symmetrical with this first half, because here we did a treble, double, and then the bobble, but now we're going to do the treble, bobble, and then the double, so they're not symmetrical. Don't worry about that, that's correct. That's just to give you a nicer finish on the corner. So a treble bobble, so that's again 5 legs worked together. 2, 3, this is leg number 4, and number 5. 6 loops on your hook, take them all off. The last stitch is in the same position where you're currently in. You already made the treble and the bobble. In that same stitch, do a double crochet. You can see how this double crochet is helping you to kind of bring that bobble together. So that's why they're in the reverse order, otherwise this bobble wouldn't look so nice. You're going to have 2 stitches left that you're going to skip, and then on the chain 3, the top of the chain 3, close with a slip stitch. And now you can cut your yarn and open up. Just going to cut and then open this up, and now work away this yarn tail. Everything that you've now done on this one corner, you need to repeat on your other 3 corners also. So you're going to have 4 identical corners at the end. So everything up to row 66, repeat on all 4 your corners, and then you'll have a very large square again. For row 67, we're going to work a row of single crochets, well, almost completely all single crochets, around the entire square. So in this round, we're going to create a base to work the next parts on. So in round 67, we're going to work around the entire square. Round 67, I have a new color yarn on my hook. And in this round, we're going to start in any chain 2 corner space. So this is on the outer, one of the 4 outer corners of the blanket. I'm going to start in here with a standing single crochet. Chain 2, and then a single crochet in the same corner space. And this here, this is your new corner. We're now going to work along the edge until we get to the other side, to the other chain 2 corner space, and there are quite a few stitches. I'll try to show them all to you systematically. I'm going to start by working a single crochet on the first 3 stitches. That's here, immediately after the chain space, there's a single crochet. Then there's a stitch just before the bobble. And then there's like this stitch here, which is the bobble. So that stitch there. 3 single crochets. We're now going to work a single crochet between the bobble and the first row. So if you open up your work, you'll kind of see that space there. We're going to work a single crochet in there, in that space. There we go. We're going to continue and work 3 single crochets along the next 8 rows. So in these spaces here where I'm kind of poking my finger through, I'm going to work 3 single crochets in each of those. So in the next 8 rows. 1, 2, 3 single crochets in the first space, then the second. So 1, 2, 3, and again 1, 2, 3. So now I've done 3 times. I'll show you all of these. 3, and this is 4. 1, 2, 3, and again 1, 2, 3. This is of course very similar to what you did at the end of part 3, or part 2, I believe. Part 2 indeed. 3, and we need this one also. I believe that was 8. Let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now you need one more. And 8. 2, and 3. So 3 single crochets in 8 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The next row here is the cluster row. So we're going to work 2 single crochets on the side of this cluster stitch. I'm just going to take it here. So 2 single crochets. So it's 1 and 2. So I'm just going to work into the side of that cluster stitch. Now a single crochet in the next row. Oh, wait, I've just got a knot in the yarn here. Just unpoke this, otherwise I'm going to have trouble with this a little later on. There we go. So 2 single crochets in the cluster stitch. We're now going to work a single crochet in the side of the next row, and this is the row that's on the top of this Banksia border here. So you see that single crochet row there, that base row. I'm going to work a single crochet to the side of that. So I'm just going to poke my hook in there. And that does need a little help. So you can see just in the side of the row. We're now again going to make 3 single crochets in the sides of the next 3 rows. So here, this is the first one. It's 1, 2, 3, and again the next row. 1, 2, 3, and the third row here. 1, 2, and 3. So 3 single crochets in the sides of the next 3 rows. Okay, now we're almost, no, we're not almost halfway. We're about a third down the road. Next we're going to work a single crochet in the side of the next row, and that's going to be here, the base row. Remember we had the single crochets in the chain 3 loops, so that's going to be that row. So here at the side I'm just going to poke my hook in there. Let's see if I can get just another loop, because then it's just a bit more secured. There. So in the side of the row, 1 single crochet, and this is just above the triangles. Now we're going to come to the triangle rows. Going to work a single crochet in the picot. Now that You've already got a single crochet in that picot there, so we're just going to join it, give it another one in that same little circle. One single crochet in the picot. Then a single crochet that's here to the side. Remember this single crochet that closed the picot, we're going to skip that. And then we're going to come to the double crochet and work a single crochet on there. So here, this single you're going to skip, here's the double. So here's a double in that chain space, so in that double, work a single in there. And in the chain space, if you open it up, you'll see that chain space there. So single crochet in the chain space and a single crochet in the single. So you've got that in the picot, in the double, the chain one, and the single. Let me just move everything a bit again. We're now going to make 3 single crochets in the size of the next 5 rows. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. 3 single crochets on each. That's 1, 2, 3. And again. 1, 2, 3. That's 2 times. And this is the 3rd row. 1, 2, 3. I've done 3 times, need 2 more. So this is 4, and this is the row where we had the popcorns. 1, 2, 3. And then the 5th row, this one here. 1, 2, and 3. We're now going to work 2 single crochets to the side of the cluster, because the next row here is the cluster row. 2 single crochets in the side of the cluster. I'm going to poke one there and there. 2 single crochets next to the cluster stitches. A half double, and this we're only going to do 2 half doubles, this is one of them. A half double in the front post stitch that's in the top of the flower. You see, here's the flower petal. Remember, you worked a front post stitch around that stitch, that front post single. We're going to work a half double in there, so I'm just going to yarn over, and this is the stitch here. I'm just going to grab it. That's the stitch, so a half double in there. Now I'm going to come to the chain 6 space here, this chain 6 space. Oh, sorry, it's a chain 5 space. We're going to work 6 single crochets in there. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 single crochets in the chain space. Again, a half double between the petal, so here's the next petal, and the next single crochet. You have here this this front post single, and there's the flower petal. I'm going to work a half double between the 2. So yarn over. So between the 2, work a half double. We're now going to make sure that this chain space here, this chain 6 space, is to the back. So the corner you have here, pull this forward. You've also got the mark stitch. Make sure it's forward and this chain space is to the back. We're now going to work into these single crochets. And we're going to work into them, into all 7 of them, 1 single crochet in each. You've got 7 stitches. And the 4th one will be the corner stitch, one that's marked. And what's important here is that you really pull out these stitches, because this first one here is a little hidden. Your work kind of falls over it. So that first one, dig it out. There, that's 1, 2, 3. Number 4 falls in the marked stitch, so this is 4. You can see how the chain space is still to the back, so 4. I'm just going to leave the stitch marker there for the moment. Just come to the next stitch. That's 5, 6, and the last one here is 7. And now we are roughly halfway, because everything we've just done we're going to repeat in almost in reverse order to the next chain 2 space. So we're going to start with a half double between the next flower petal and the single crochet. So again, if it's a half double, so if you look here, here's the flower petal and there's the stitch, kind of in between the two. Again, be sure to leave the chain spaces to the back. You don't want to work over anything else except just between the stitch and the flower petal. Work a half double. Come to the chain space, chain 4 space, and work 6 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 single crochets, and kind of move them all, spread them out evenly. So 6 single crochets. Let me just move my work again, and then we're going to do a half double. My work is getting a little bigger here on my lap. I'm going to work a half double in the front post single that's around the flower petal. So there's the front post single. I'm going to work a half double in that stitch. And this can be a little hard and a little tight to get into. There you go. That's the front post single. Work a half double in there. We're now going to come to the cluster stitch. Work 2 single crochets along the side. 1 and 2. 3 single crochets along the side of each row until we get to the triangle, to the triangle row. So 3 rows. So 1, 2, 3, that's 1. This is 2. This is 3. This is 4. I'll show you in a moment what it looks like. And then one more is 5. 1, 2, 3. So we've got 3 single crochets along 5 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the point where you're at now. I'm going to make 3 single crochets. Those were the 3 single crochets. We're now at the triangle row. I'm going to work a single crochet in the next single, because you've got here the single, chain 1 and a double, and the picot. To work a single crochet in the single, then in the chain 1 space, then in the double crochet, and then in the picot. I've got 4 singles there in total. You now work a single crochet in the side of the next row, and this is again, remember I had the single crochet, chain 3, now in the side of this row. I'm going to poke my hook in there somewhere. Work a single. Now again 3 singles in the sides of the next 3 rows. So these 3 rows here. This is the first one. 1, 2, 3. Next row. 1, 2, 3, and the next row. 1, 2, 3. We're almost to the cluster row again. Now, but first a single crochet again here in the side of this row, which is above the back. This was the Banksia row, and there, that's that stitch there. 1 single. Now we're at the cluster stitches. 2 single crochets on the side here. 1, 2. 3 single crochets along the edges of the next 8 rows, and that will bring you almost to the corner. So that's 1, 3 single crochets. This is the second row. 1, 2, 3. This is the third row. 1, 2, 3. Fourth row. 1, 2, 3. This is row number 5. 3 single crochets in every row. This is row number 6. 2, 3. Row number 7. And the last row, row number 8. And then I'll just quickly show you your work. What your work should look like more or less here. So these were the 2 single crochets in the cluster stitch, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 2 single crochets. You're now almost to the corner. You have the slip stitch here. We're going to skip the slip stitch, then come to the next stitch, which is the bobble. Single crochet in there, and in the next stitch, and in the next. So 3 singles. And then you're to the corner, which gets a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet. And this corner is exactly the same as the corner we started with. That means on your next edge you're going to do everything we just did and repeat and repeat. So all of these stitches, do them exactly the same on your other 3 edges also. And when you get back to your first stitch here, close on that stitch with a slip stitch and leave your yarn attached. When you've gone all the way around, close on your first stitch with a slip stitch. At this point, what's important is to count your stitches. Along every edge you should have 148 stitches. That's of course not counting the chain 2 spaces, but it is counting all the stitches in between. And if you look at the stitch where the stitch marker is, this should be in stitch number 75. So number 75 should be in the stitch that's in the marker. If that's the case, if you have 148 stitches and number 75 is in the marked stitch, then you can remove your stitch markers. And I'm just actually going to use this stitch marker just to secure this first loop, because we're going to continue with this loop next time in part 7. When you've done this, when you've gone all the way around, you have 148 single crochets, well, plus a few half doubles of course, so 148 stitches total. At that point you've finished part 6. I want to thank you for watching. I hope to see you again next time for part 7.